And I have two other daughters, so my oldest is very into the baby, but my middle child, not so much.
He was, after I gave birth, he was like, oh my gosh, if I lost you and I, went to the park with our 3 kids, I mean, think of the ladies I can.
So all along, when we thought maybe Blake wanted the rights, I mean, she might end up being the director, right? But in all utter reality, maybe Colleen Hoover did not want to give up her rights.
Hollywood finds itself caught in a storm as the much-hyped film adaptation of It Ends With Us spirals into controversy, with Blake Lively now positioned at the center of a growing divide. The chaos escalated after author Colleen Hoover, whose book inspired the movie, made the unexpected choice to publicly voice her unwavering support for Lively. That show of loyalty came right as director and co-star Justin Baldoni became entangled in a legal case that has cast a long shadow over the production. What might have been a triumphant rollout has instead turned into a swirl of legal intrigue, fractured alliances, and unanswered questions about whether the film will even reach audiences on schedule. The first spark came when Baldoni, who plays Ryle in addition to directing, was suddenly swept into legal troubles. Industry whispers quickly suggested that the uncertainty surrounding his case could derail the release entirely. As speculation grew, Hoover stepped forward not with neutrality, but with a strikingly one-sided stance that placed her squarely behind Blake Lively. That endorsement instantly shifted the balance of power, strengthening Lively's image while deepening doubts about Baldoni's role and credibility moving forward. Blake herself responded without a wordy statement but instead through careful, deliberate moves. She liked supportive posts online, maintained a polished and unshaken presence at public appearances, and projected quiet confidence. Her subtle actions carried as much weight as any press release, signaling to Hollywood insiders that she wasn't going to waver, even as rumors swirled of tensions simmering long before the legal drama erupted. For many, Baldoni's scandal wasn't the beginning of the fracture but the final crack that exposed years of creative clashes and behind-the-scenes strain. Hoover's public words weren't seen as casual commentary. To many, they felt like a calculated declaration, an unmistakable break from Baldoni that shook fans and industry circles alike. Some speculated she had grown uneasy with his influence long before lawyers became involved. Others argued that unresolved disputes over power, creative vision, and control of the adaptation had been bubbling just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. Given Hoover's stature as the best-selling author behind the story, her choice carried immense weight, leaving fans to wonder why she elevated Lively so decisively while sidelining Baldoni. At the same time, Hoover herself has faced criticism that complicated her position. After her son was accused of inappropriate behavior with a teenage girl he met on Snapchat, the backlash was swift and harsh. Reports claimed the victim had even attempted to reach out to Hoover for help, only to be blocked. When Hoover later admitted that her son had exchanged inappropriate messages but insisted the wider allegations were distorted, the damage was already done. Critics accused her of minimizing the situation and protecting her family's image, an accusation that cut deeply given her public reputation for writing about trauma and survival. These contradictions eroded Hoover's credibility and turned her into a lightning rod for scrutiny. Online, she was portrayed as an author capable of writing stories about resilience and justice but unwilling to fully uphold those values in real life. Her silence on social media during peak backlash only fueled the perception that she was retreating instead of confronting the issue. By contrast, Blake Lively appeared unshaken, presenting herself as composed, strategic, and in control, though even her image was not without criticism. Leaks from the set painted her as a strong-willed figure intent on reshaping Hoover's story to her liking, allegedly pushing changes to aesthetics and tone that some felt undermined the book's emotional core. This left Hoover's glowing praise of Lively, describing her as patient, honest, and supportive, open to interpretation. Was it a heartfelt endorsement, or a tactical move to align herself with the project's most powerful star just as her own reputation faltered? Industry gossip only deepened those doubts, with rumors that Hoover and Lively may have quietly worked together to wrestle creative control away from Baldoni. The timing of Hoover's break from him, coming after reports of on-set disputes and even misconduct claims, only added to that theory. Whether Hoover's allegiance was born out of loyalty or opportunism, the outcome is clear. What began as a straightforward adaptation of a best-selling romance novel has unraveled into a saga of legal battles, personal scandals, and Hollywood power struggles. Each new development feels less about honoring the story itself and more about preserving reputations and controlling the narrative. Blake Lively has emerged, for now, as the poised figurehead. Colleen Hoover continues to wield influence despite her controversies. And Justin Baldoni finds himself fighting to hold on to both his role and his credibility. One thing, however, is undeniable: the world is watching closely. It Ends With Us is no longer just a fictional tale about heartbreak and survival. It has become a real-life drama that mirrors the messy fault lines of Hollywood itself. And with the storm still raging, no one can say for sure how, or when, this story will finally reach its ending.
Have a what?
A sequence, like it starts with this.
Oh.
I mean, if Colleen has her rights, I'll go anywhere. I'll follow this woman anywhere.
Y'all heard her.
And he's like, I mean, I've got a long list. And I was like, oh, really? Because I just have one on my list.
Hollywood's rumor mill is working overtime as the film adaptation of It Ends With Us descends further into controversy. What should have been a seamless production has now unraveled into a saga of whispers, accusations, and carefully calculated moves. At the center of the storm, Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and best-selling author Colleen Hoover, three names once united by a shared vision, now entangled in a power struggle that feels bigger than the story they set out to tell. For Baldoni, this project was supposed to be a career-defining moment. He wasn't just playing Ryle, he was also steering the film from the director's chair. But the dream quickly soured when legal trouble thrust him into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. What began as a passion project soon carried the risk of collapse, with insiders warning that the film's release could be derailed entirely. Then came a twist few expected. Hoover, the author whose novel launched the phenomenon, chose not to stand by Baldoni. Instead, she threw her public support squarely behind Blake Lively, praising her in glowing terms that reverberated across Hollywood. Blake, true to form, didn't need long statements to get her message across. Through quiet but deliberate gestures, cryptic likes on social media, poised appearances at public events, and a steady, unflinching demeanor, she made it clear she wasn't backing down. Those moves carried weight, especially since whispers suggested that tensions between her and Baldoni had been simmering long before his legal troubles. Reports pointed to creative disagreements, power struggles, and an uneasy dynamic that may have set the stage for this very fallout. Hoover's decision to align herself so strongly with Blake only magnified the drama. Fans questioned whether this was simply personal loyalty or something more strategic. When she described Lively as kind, honest, and patient, her words didn't sound like casual praise, they read like a deliberate stance. Some even speculated she was preparing to distance herself from Baldoni entirely, perhaps with an eye toward reclaiming the film rights for herself. That theory gained momentum as Hoover launched her own production company, Heartbones Entertainment, and quickly lined up new adaptation deals. The timing was difficult to ignore. Fuel was added to the fire when Blake made an eyebrow-raising comment in a CNN interview, hinting she'd be all in for a sequel if Colleen Hoover had the rights. Legally, those rights still belong to Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios. Which meant her comment wasn't harmless banter, it sounded more like a signal. A suggestion that Hoover and Lively were already plotting for control. That speculation only intensified when Hoover quietly retained a powerhouse law firm known for representing Hollywood heavyweights like Johnny Depp and Brad Pitt. To many observers, it looked less like coincidence and more like preparation for a legal showdown. Fans and critics soon began connecting the dots. Baldoni's legal issues didn't just generate bad headlines, they intersected with a morality clause in his contract. According to reports, if he were ever accused of sexual misconduct, the rights to It Ends With Us would revert back to Hoover, giving her the power to reassign them. In that context, Hoover's public praise of Blake and Blake's perfectly timed hints appeared far less random. To some, it looked like the makings of a coordinated strategy, a high-stakes power play designed to push Baldoni out while Hoover and Lively took control. When harassment allegations against Baldoni surfaced, the fallout was swift and brutal. His agency dropped him, studios pulled back, and his future in the project was cast into doubt almost overnight. Meanwhile, the balance of power tipped unmistakably toward Hoover and Lively. Online investigators went digging, unearthing receipts, timelines, and even an old Reddit thread allegedly written by a crew member months before the scandal broke. That post claimed the set had long been rife with tension, quiet maneuvering, and suspicions that Baldoni might eventually be forced out. What looked like a sudden implosion began to resemble a carefully laid plan finally snapping into public view now, with Hoover operating her own production company, Blake wielding her star power, and Ryan Reynolds rumored to provide significant financial backing. Fans are no longer convinced this is just a messy clash of personalities. Many see it as a calculated takeover, a deliberate effort to sideline Baldoni and reshape the project under new leadership. Whether it's a savvy business move or a ruthless Hollywood coup depends on who you ask. What's clear is that this scandal isn't just about one adaptation of a best-selling novel. It's about influence, control, and the extraordinary lengths people will go to secure their place at the top of the industry. And with more revelations emerging almost daily, one truth stands out: this story is nowhere near finished. The legal drama, the shifting loyalties, and the questions of who truly holds the power have only just begun to unravel.
One of two people, maybe. And then I get a call from my managers and my agent. They were both on the line, which means it's something serious.
Right.
Either you got the job or there's something.
It's like a wedding, like something old, something borrowed, something blue, something new.
Wait, which
except
one?
it's
Now I want to think of the scene.
Oh, I'm wearing.
Events starts looking less like random missteps and more like a carefully orchestrated campaign. Piece by piece, the puzzle suggests a plan that may have been set in motion long before the cameras even rolled. Reports claim that tensions between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni first escalated after a comment he allegedly made on set about her appearance. From that moment, their working relationship reportedly shifted. The strain only deepened when Baldoni, unhappy with the initial cut of It Ends With Us, brought in his own editors to reshape the film. That decision clashed directly with Lively, who wanted her own team in charge. When the studio sided against her, insiders say she threatened to go public with harassment claims unless she was given full control. Faced with the risk of scandal, Sony relented, restricting Baldoni's role in post-production and handing Blake the creative reins she demanded. Once in power, Blake brought in editors with music video credentials, including collaborators of Taylor Swift. But with Blake quickly jetting off to another project, the team struggled. The cut deteriorated so badly that an outside professional was eventually called to stabilize the film. As if that weren't enough, new trouble surfaced when Swift allegedly objected to the chosen composer, forcing Sony to remove him under pressure. Each of these disruptions chipped away at the production's stability, all while reinforcing Blake's influence behind the scenes. Viewed together, the pattern doesn't read like simple chaos, it resembles a systematic dismantling of Baldoni's authority. Blake strengthened her grip over creative control, while Colleen Hoover was quietly positioning her new production company, Heartbones Entertainment, for future power plays. And the timing of Colleen's sudden support for Blake only amplified suspicions. Consider the timeline. Blake raised her claims. Hoover immediately voiced her support. When Baldoni pushed back with evidence, Hoover abruptly went silent. Shortly after, his attorney signaled that subpoenas could force private digital communications into the public record. Days later, Hoover wiped her entire Instagram presence, vanishing without explanation. To many, the move looked less like coincidence and more like preemptive damage control. What emerges is a narrative that feels less like an accidental implosion and more like a Hollywood thriller, strategic, ruthless, and layered with betrayal. Was Blake Lively the mastermind, planting doubts, confiding in Hoover, and framing herself as the vulnerable hero? Imagine her pulling Colleen aside, voicing fears about Justin's behavior, and painting herself as torn between loyalty and survival. If that story was persuasive enough, Hoover may have believed she was acting on principle, when in reality she may have been swept into Blake's larger strategy. Meanwhile, Hoover's sudden retreat from the spotlight and her surprising announcement of retirement at the height of her success has only fueled speculation. Was she stepping back because she was complicit, or because she realized too late that she had been used as a pawn? Her silence leaves room for both interpretations, neither flattering. And then there's the morality clause, the hidden trigger buried in Baldoni's original contract. The stipulation was clear: if he were ever accused of misconduct, the rights to It Ends With Us would revert back to Hoover. And who was positioned to benefit? Blake Lively, the very star Hoover was now elevating. When the accusations surfaced, Baldoni's agency cut ties, studios pulled back, and Hoover stood ready to reclaim control of her story, this time with Blake firmly at her side. It's a scenario that reads less like misfortune and more like a high-stakes power play wrapped in the language of morality. Whether Hoover was a willing participant or simply caught in the crossfire, Blake's fingerprints appear everywhere, from the perfectly timed allegations, to the studio pressure tactics, to the victim narrative that reshaped her role from actress to power broker. At its core, this saga raises one haunting question. Was this the downfall of Justin Baldoni by chance, or by design? Was Hoover a co-conspirator, or simply another piece moved across the board by a far shrewder player? Either way, the story is far from over. The legal battles, the unanswered questions, and the shifting alliances all but guarantee more twists ahead.